It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
And today, John is in Studio JC. He's was on the air last night. What time did you get done last night, by the way, John?
I think we wrapped the show at about 11 o'clock, I think.
So, hindsight being 2020, that's his first time Scott Fawn ever did that. So is he going to do that again, or is that just like, this is too much work?
I think it went so well he has to do it again. I think his advertisers and I think folks who were a part of the production of the show will insist that he do it again. I think he wants to. It went so well.
Interesting. Okay. We talked about a couple different things. Last thing we talked about. What was the last thing we talked about before we went to the break? I'm having
Cori Bush.
What's that?
I was going to say Cori Bush.
I got this has actually gotten to be, I don't know what it is with my phone number. I probably get 15 to 20 calls a day, and they're all the automated ones. And it's to the point where sometimes if I'm with people, I'll answer them on speakerphone, and I did one the other day, and sometimes people are like shocked what I say. Like, I normally get the ones, and it's sort of weird because they're using some kind of a phone system where it's a dead giveaway. When the system starts, you answer the phone, hello, it rings, you answer the phone, and there's a little bit of silence, and you hear this little twink like that. It's just like this little thing. And I go, okay, here we go. So it's an AI robocall, and most of them are women. And I did this the other day when I was with a woman member of my family. And she got most upset with me because of the fact that when the thing started out and, you hit a little dunk and the woman comes on and says, hi, how are you today? And my response is, I'm horny. And what's interesting is you know they're not listening because of the fact then the woman comes back on and says, oh, great. Let me tell you about, to the point where like.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course, they just barrel through.
Right, because it's all automated, okay? So I get these calls all the time. So Monday, I'm in a gas station, gassing up my car, and I finish up, and I literally sit in the car, turn the key, and my phone rings, and I answer the phone. It's a 314 number. I answer the phone, and it's a dude, and it sounds like Mr. Automation. And the guy starts in, hi, I'm Joe. I can't remember his name. He gave me his name. I'm calling for Cori Bush. And I stop, and I go, okay, let me ask you a question. What's 2 plus 2? Because if it's automated, unless it's a really good system, they're going to go, well, thanks for asking. Now, let me tell you why I called. You know what I mean? They're just going to blow by you.
Yeah, of course.
And the guy says, well, it's 4. So I go, you're a real person. So he tells me why I should vote for Cori Bush. And so I'm going like, you know what? I'm going to see if this guy is just like a hired hand or if this guy is really passionate about Cori Bush. So I said to him, and for my Jewish friends, please don't be mad at me, but I said to him, well, I'm Jewish, and I'm not a real big fan of Cori Bush. So he starts telling me, well, you have to understand that, the majority of the people, and he gives me a very reasoned response of why, even though I'm Jewish, I should vote for Cori Bush. And I'm telling you, I probably talked to this guy for 10 minutes. And he's, giving me all these things.
Wow.
Well, Cori is very much involved in the community. And I go, okay, well then, why isn't she helping out with the city schools? He comes right back. Well, she's on top of that right now. And I know there's a lot of commotion going on with the city schools and the superintendent. I'm going like, okay, this guy's on top of it. This guy is obviously.
That's good. That's an informed volunteer for sure. Or paid hand, whatever.
Exactly. He knows he's not just some buddy they got off the street. Hey, buddy, come here. See this button. Hit this button. It's going to auto-dial a phone number, and you're going to talk to people and tell them why they should vote for Cori Bush. Okay, so that's item number one. And by the way, I'm having problems here this morning. I've got the studio complex. We're wired. We've got 3 or 4 different printers in the entire building, okay? And they're all on the network. I can't get any of them to work this morning. I'm going like, what the hell is going on? So I'm working off an old show sheet. I have my segment sheet here. I'm working off old ones. So let me put this Cori Bush. Okay, topic number 2. Are you familiar with what's going on with Harley Davidson? Have you heard this crazy story?
No, I'm not.
Harley Davidson has a new CEO, and apparently the dude's from, not necessarily new. I think he's been there a couple years. He came in during year number 1 of the COVID crisis. And obviously, Harley Davidson, like a lot of companies, was getting their butt kicked during the COVID because of the fact that when the bars are closed and when the bars in Defiance are all closed because of COVID, nobody's getting on their Harley and nobody's driving here and there in their Harley, and sales were way off, okay? This guy comes in and he signs off on some DEI agreement or something like that. I can't remember. There's some name for it, some organization that corporations say, we're part of the DEI culture. Now the hardcore Harley fans are going like, okay, we don't like Harley anymore. We're going to start buying Indian. You know what Indian is? It's an old motorcycle brand that was around for a long time, and now it's been resurrected. I don't know who actually owns it, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like most of the bikes are sort of old retro kind of bikes, okay? And there's a long article I read. If you want, I'll send you the article that talks about how what this guy is doing, he's sort of committing brand suicide. And they talk about the fact that, I don't know if Sturgis was, you know what Sturgis is, right?
Yeah, it's in South Dakota. It's kind of a convergence of motorcycle folks.
Right, and it's mainly Harley people. I mean, there's other people as well, too, but it's a big Harley gathering. And it talked about that and the guy is making parallels between Harley Davidson and Bud Light. And it talked about the fact that a couple years ago was 2 years ago or whatever it was when the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing came out, that at the Sturgis, at the Harley Davidson Festival, the Bud Light tent, which used to be packed, there was nobody there. And now they say the same thing's happening with where the Harley Davidson is. Okay, if you're a CEO and you have an iconic brand like Harley Davidson, why in the world would you go and once again, when you think of Harley, what do you think of? You think of like, some of the negative aspects of Harley. You think of like the Hells Angels. But when you go out to Defiance, and I don't know if that's way anymore because two of the bars were both owned by the Hoffmans, and they sold one of them, and I think they might have sold the other one. But if you've ever been through Defiance, there's the S-curve in Defiance, and it's like biker bar heaven, especially if you go in the spring. Summer, pretty strong. Fall, pretty big. It's all the guys dressed in leather, all the women dressed in leather with their, halter tops and the dudes looking tough and the women looking, like they could look at you and you'd fall over backwards because they're tough as well too. Why would you screw with that image? Why would you screw with that brand and embrace something that is sort of counter to the brand and the image of that brand? You know what I'm saying?
Do know, yeah. And first of all, I think it's just inexplicable of why you would do that. But I would think that also, too, you look at the companies that have waded into this, and I feel like John Deere and Tractor Supply Company and other companies that have taken a more reasonable stand, I think many of their customers have supported them. But I don't know, to your point, I don't know why you would mess with a brand as iconic as Harley Davidson. My guess is you just think that nobody's really going to pay attention. And you also think, well, every other corporation does these corporate policies and not too many people care, so probably nobody's going to pay attention.
Yeah, but here's the problem. You might have been able to get away with that 20, 30 years ago, but especially in the last 10 to 20 years ago, or 10 to 20 years, and especially the last 5 years with the influx of social media, there's all these groups on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram where, what do you call it? There's a term in what's the term?
Canceling?
No, there's a term in branding where you have someone who's like a big fan.
An influencer.
No, it's not even that. I can't remember. I'll think of it in a minute. In other words, you have all these people, and all it takes is one person to get on that essentially whatever it is, the group within Facebook or something. Like, you're not going to believe it, but the CEO of Harley has embraced DEI. And then immediately everybody goes, oh my God, what in the world's he thinking? You know what I mean?
This reminds us of, what's the name of the spice company that we discussed?
Penzies or whatever it is.
Penzies, yeah, that's right.
Okay, here's the story. I'll send this to you. This was actually it's published this morning, 4 o'clock this morning. Harley Davidson faces woke accusations from Sturgis bikers. Breaks my heart, one of the quotes. Harley Davidson is facing biker backlash over fears that the American motorcycle manufacturer born with a renegade image is now identifying as woke. And I'm going like, okay, I don't get it. I don't understand why you do that. Now, I'll give you a perfect example, okay? And this is sort of a weird example, but did you ever hear of MacArthur's Bakery? It's a local brand here in St. Louis. You ever heard?
I have, yep.
Okay. There's a guy who used to be on, matter of fact, I think it was the MacArthur brothers. I just sent you that story, by the way. I texted it to you. The MacArthur brothers used to run MacArthur Bakery, and I think it was handed down from their parents, and they had a location there in Kirkwood. And there was a guy, I can't remember if his name was Dave MacArthur. He was one of the brothers running the company, and he was a regular caller in 97.1. And he was good friends with Tony Colombo, and he was good friends with this is going back in the day when it was with Jamie Allman and the whole bit, okay? And he would call in all the time. He was like a regular caller. And then he started talking about his son. He had this son, and apparently his son was a big dude called Moose. And talked about him, my son Moose is a junior in high school, and he's going to join the Marines when he graduates. So this is over the course of a couple of years. So he graduated from high school, and he joins the Marines. And Dave would call in all the time and say, oh, my God, I'm so proud of my son. I'm so proud of my son. Sad, like 2 months after he gets out of basic training, he ends up in Afghanistan, and he's in a convoy, and one of the vehicles in the convoy got hit by an IED, and his son was almost killed. And his son, they flew him back to the United States, and he has traumatic brain injury and the whole bit, okay? And people were praying for his son, and this was a big deal. And this is on 97.1, and people were talking about, oh my God, we're gonna buy, and people would call in all the time. I just want Dave to know that we ordered our birthday cake from MacArthur's Bakery, and we love it, and it's absolutely positively the best thing we ever had. Okay, so there's a point to my story here, John. Bear with me. MacArthur Bakery has this image of being a conservative-based company based right here in St. Louis. And conservative people, especially 97.1 listeners, bought stuff from MacArthur Bakery. You with me so far? I put John to sleep.
Yeah, I remember this very well. Yeah.
Okay.
I remember the story very well.
Monday, I'm in Schnucks, and I'm in the bakery department. And I go by, there's a little new display, and there's a display. On the top of the display it says, inclusion in big words. And you read this thing, and it talks about these cookies were made by people because of the fact that, and guess who the baker is? MacArthur Bakery hires from all different types of people. So they have an inclusion. And the cookies are smiling face cookies, each handmade by inclusive people that work at MacArthur's Bakery. And I think to myself, this ain't the same MacArthur's Bakery as, Dave and his son Moose talked about all the time. So I picked up one of the packages, and sure enough, it's a local company. It's MacArthur Bakery. And I looked it up, and the MacArthur family sold the MacArthur Bakery to somebody else. Now,
wow, okay.
If the bakery has a history of very, conservative owners, and you buy that bakery, do you think you're going to score points with all the people who have done business with that bakery because it's the MacArthur family, and all of a sudden you've done a 180 and you're selling inclusive cookies? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, now, the only thing I could think of is, are they talking about, do they maybe employ some special needs folks to make these? Or do we think, Brad, that the inclusion means what we assume it means? You get what I'm saying?
Well, hold on a minute. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to see if I can find the picture. I took a picture of it. Yeah, here it is right here. Okay. I'm going to send you the picture. This is the display in Schnucks. You can take a look at it. And it says, okay, taste the sweetness of inclusion. And it says, lovingly made. You know what? You're right. It says, lovingly made by adults with disabilities in an integrated workforce. Okay. But
okay. So, yeah. So we're not talking about two women getting married. We're talking about some handicapped people that need a little bit of help.
Yeah, but still, when you throw the word inclusion in there, that's one of those buzzwords now that if you're on the left side of the equation, people go, oh, that's great. You're from the right side of the equation, people go, oh, that's horrible. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe this is just brilliant, Brad. Maybe this is us taking the word inclusion back, and maybe the real definition of inclusion It's not based on sexual orientation or the color of your skin, but being differently abled.
I don't know.
And I think it's beautiful. This is great. And maybe, for real, Brad, maybe they're just taking back the word inclusion.
I don't know. I mean, it to me, I don't quite. It would be like one day we wake up and White Castle comes out with an ad saying, for years we produced these little burgers with the holes in them, and we're not going to put the holes in the burgers anymore, and we're not going to fry them in onions anymore, and the buns are going to be round, and people are going to go, well, then why the hell did I need to go to White Castle anymore? You know what I'm saying? It's to the point where it's like,
It would be almost as bad as Zaxby's closing in Columbia.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, please do. I'm not an expert on it, but I sent you the information.
Well, someone who, and you this is John. There's some interesting things with John. If John will sometimes send me screenshots of things that people send him. They're like text conversations and things like that. And I'll say, hey, John, who sent you? Oh, I can't tell you. It's a secret. And he means it. He can't tell me. Is this another secret where you can't tell me who this person is?
No, not at all. And this is Kelton Turner, who is, and I asked him explicitly yesterday. I said, hey, could I send and by the way, I've never sent screenshots from anybody who says I couldn't send you screenshot. But we know that you have a tendency to mention names on the air. But I checked this with Kelton, and Kelton said, absolutely, send him the screenshots and let him know that it's from him. So Kelton Turner, who's Scott's producer, among many other valuable roles he does for the Missouri Times, did essentially a deep dive into what happened to that location. Did you read those? Did you read that information?
Well, let's talk about it from the next break, because I just thought the place went out of business, but it sounds like there was some crazy weird thing that happened at the Zaxby's in Columbia. I mean, from what you sent me, I'm going like,
yeah, I think so.
Okay, this is sort of bizarre. What the hell is this about? Okay, and I'll give the whole Zaxby's explanation of how that originally came to, and how they ended up in Columbia with the SEC, the whole bit. Okay, that is all coming up, and I know people are going to be sitting on the edge of their seats listening to this. Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?